I never used to dread Easter dinner, but over the years, it became a kind of emotional obstacle course. My family had a way of turning even the smallest gathering into a judgment parade. And somehow, I always ended up being the main attraction. By the time I walked into my Aunt Margaret's house that Sunday, wearing a soft cream blazer, high waisted trousers, and my favorite nude heels, I could already feel the comments loading in their mouths like ammunition. The smell of glazed ham and cinnamon rolls filled the dining room, mixing with that oddly stiff tension families get when they claim they just want to catch up. The first thing I heard wasn't a greeting. It was my cousin Jessica whispering loudly to her sister, "Oh, wow, Emma actually dressed up this time." Then she added, "Maybe she's trying to look like she has somewhere to be." I pretended not to hear her as I set down the dessert I brought, fresh strawberry tarts from a bakery I invested in, though no one knew that, of course. My hands were steady, but inside, I felt that familiar sting. The underestimation, the assumption that I was the family disappointment, the black sheep next to my sister, the golden child everyone adored. My sister, Olivia, breezed in behind me wearing a pastel blue dress that hugged her just right, her hair curled like she'd walked straight off a bridal magazine cover. She held her toddler on her hip while her husband carried a giant Easter basket overflowing with toys. Mom rushed over to them immediately, cooing, "There's my perfect family. Look at you all. You're glowing. Olivia, sweetheart, you're just radiant." Then she looked at me and said, "Emily, you look nice. Very professional." That pause before professional made the tips of my ears burn. But what they didn't know was that under my blazer, I was wearing a silk camisole that cost more than most of their monthly grocery bills. And the small clutch I carried wasn't just any purse, it was limited edition Valentino. I had been keeping a secret for years, and it was wrapped around every part of me, from the gold necklace resting on my collarbone to the key fob tucked secretly in my coat pocket for a property no one even knew I owned. Aunt Margaret approached me next, wearing her usual peach-colored lipstick that always smudged a little outside the lip line. She gave me a tight hug, one of those polite ones that last just long enough to feel fake. "Emma, dear," she said, patting my shoulder, "how's your situation? Still doing that little online thing?" She meant my company, the company I built from scratch, the company currently valued at $23 million. But I smiled and said, "Yes, still doing it." Her eyebrows lifted with that pitying arch she'd perfected over decades of subtle insults. "Well," she sighed dramatically, "at least you're keeping busy. Not everyone is meant for a real job." She turned to my mother and said in that loud whisper older women think is quiet, "Such a sad life, isn't it? She's so alone." I almost laughed. Sad? Alone? If only she knew the truth behind the calls I'd been quietly sending to voicemail all morning. Calls from my lawyer about a new deal. Calls from my business partner who had just been contacted by Forbes for a feature. Calls that I muted every time I stepped closer to the family to avoid their judgmental looks. We all sat down at the long wooden dining table, decorated with pastel napkins and plastic eggs. I took a seat toward the end, knowing that's where I belonged in their eyes. The odd part was, I didn't even feel offended anymore. That old pain had dulled into something else, something almost powerful, because little did my family realize that I had been keeping a secret that was about to come out whether I wanted it to or not. As the chatter began, it took exactly 8 minutes for the first major insult to arrive. Jessica turned to me with a smirk. "So, Emma, still single, or did you finally download a dating app like I suggested?" I lifted my glass of water and said, "I'm focusing on myself." She rolled her eyes dramatically. "Yeah, but focusing on what? Don't you ever want stability? A real partner? I mean, at least Olivia found someone who can take care of her." My sister laughed lightly, brushing her hair behind her ear. Jess, be nice. Emma is independent. Some people don't need a husband. But you'll meet someone eventually, Emma. Don't stop trying. The way she said trying made it sound like I was shopping at a clearance bin of boyfriends that kept rejecting me. The thing they didn't know was that I wasn't single because I wasn't unwanted. I was single because I was uninterested in anyone who would get in the way of my life's freedom. And that freedom, it came from the business they all assumed was a joke. I'd started it 5 years ago, out of my tiny apartment with a squeaky ceiling fan and mismatched furniture. I built it through nights of exhaustion and caffeine overload, through failures and experiments and moments when I thought I'd break. But I didn't. I pushed harder. And last year, an investor bought a minority stake for $4.8 million. My bank account currently sat at $6.9 million. But for now, I ate my scalloped potatoes silently while my family praised Olivia for her real career. She worked part-time as a dental hygienist. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but they made it sound like she'd cured diseases. Aunt Margaret even said, Olivia always was the ambitious one. I nearly choked on my roll. Halfway through dinner, the retention hook moment struck, as if the universe timed it perfectly. My phone buzzed against my thigh, vibrating persistently. I glanced down and saw the caller ID, Attorney Lewis. My stomach flipped. That call mattered, big time. But the room fell silent when Aunt Margaret raised her eyebrows. Who's calling you during dinner? She asked. I swallowed. Just work. She scoffed and said loud enough for everyone to hear, Work? Emma, dear, real jobs don't call on holidays. I let the call go to voicemail. The phone buzzed again. A text flashed. Call back ASAP. Forbes moved up your interview. My heart skipped a beat. Forbes? I'd waited years for recognition like that. But I locked my screen because I refused to give my family the satisfaction of seeing anything that hinted at success. Not yet. Then, and I swear on everything, it was Jessica who delivered the next blow. You know, Emma, she began, dabbing her mouth with a napkin, you should consider moving back home. I'm sure your mom would let you stay with her, at least until you get on your feet. You're almost 32, right? The whole table seemed to nod in agreement. Mom said softly, We worry about you, sweetheart. You've been drifting. No stability. No husband. No home. You rent that small place, don't you? Small place. Right. The small place was a penthouse I bought for $890K last year. A penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, where I sipped my morning coffee while reviewing partnership contracts worth more than my mother's house. What happened next left them speechless. I whispered to myself mentally because I could feel something shifting inside me. The pressure, the irritation, the years of biting my tongue. My patience was thinning to a thread. But I stopped. Not yet. Revenge is best served calmly. Dessert was brought out. Carrot cake, the store-bought kind, that always tasted too sweet. Olivia and her husband were bragging about a beach timeshare they bought, and Aunt Margaret gushed as though they'd purchased a mansion in the Hamptons. Meanwhile, she turned to me and said, Emma, you should start saving, you know. Even a few $100s a month helps. She said it slowly, like she was explaining budgeting to a toddler. I smiled tightly. I do save. She laughed. I'm sure you'd try, dear. But the phone call I received that day would change everything. Right as I took a bite of cake, my phone buzzed again. This time, with a notification loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Incoming wire confirmation. $1,200,000 received. The table went silent. Everyone turned to look at me. Aunt Margaret stared at my phone like she'd seen a ghost. "What was that?" she demanded. I froze. I hadn't planned to reveal anything today, but the moment was no longer in my control. The truth was slipping out like a secret tired of being hidden. I unlocked the phone, mostly out of instinct. The screen lit up, bright and undeniable. The bank notification, clearly displaying my name and the amount. My pulse thudded in my ears. That was when Olivia whispered, "Emma, what is that?" I took a slow breath, the kind that comes before a truth you've held too long. I said softly, "It's a wire transfer." "A wire transfer?" Aunt Margaret repeated, incredulous. "For what? $100? I put my phone on the table. The screen didn't lie. The numbers stared back at them. $1,200,000. Jessica choked on her water. Her sister gasped. My mother covered her mouth. It was silent, except for the ticking of the old clock above the fireplace. Finally, Aunt Margaret spoke. "This must be some kind of mistake." I met her eyes. "It's not." She blinked rapidly, trying to process. But how? From where?" I exhaled. "My business." Jessica snorted. "Your little online thing." "My company," I corrected. Olivia's husband leaned forward. "You never said your business made that kind of money." I looked at my sister. No one ever asked. The panic on their faces was a performance worth years of humiliation. My mother leaned in like she was afraid I'd disappear if she blinked. "Emma, how much money do you have?" I decided to answer honestly. $6.9 million. The fork slipped from her hand and clattered onto the plate. $6.9 million? Aunt Margaret grabbed her napkin like she was about to faint. "That can't be true. You've been single, living in that tiny apartment, wearing those professional outfits." I smiled at that. "I don't wear labels on my forehead." She stuttered. But where did you get it?" "I built a tech-based logistics platform 5 years ago. I've been expanding. Yesterday, a new investor bought in. That's the wire transfer you saw." The shock ripple traveled around the table. For the first time in years, no one had anything condescending to say. Then came the panic. Jessica leaned forward urgently. "So, are you hiring? Because my job isn't fulfilling me, and I feel like I'd be great at helping a startup." "I'm not a startup," I said calmly. "We're fully scaled, and we're not hiring." Jessica's face fell. My mother reached out and touched my hand with a trembling grip. "Emma, why didn't you tell us?" I shrugged. "You all had a very specific idea of who I was. I didn't feel the need to convince anyone otherwise." Aunt Margaret wasn't giving up. "But if you have so much money, why do you still live in that small apartment?" I flashed a tiny smile. "I don't. I bought a penthouse last year. I just never invited any of you." Her lips parted and no sound came out. Olivia stared at me with wide, soft eyes. "Emma, are you happy?" I nodded. "Very." The air shifted. It wasn't tense now. It was desperate. They wanted to reframe me, reevaluate me, reclaim me in their narrative of family hierarchy. They wanted access, connection, benefits. But I remember every comment, every laugh, such a sad life. Every time I was talked over, dismissed, diminished.
Aunt Margaret finally said the one thing I had been expecting. Well, dear, we're family. You should have leaned on us. We want to support you. I couldn't help it. I let out a soft laugh. No, Aunt Margaret, you wanted to instruct me, not support me. She went red. I stood up slowly, smoothing my blazer. I need to take that call from my lawyer, I said, picking up my phone. Forbes wants to confirm details. That, apparently, was the final blow. My family watched me like I had become a different species, like I wasn't the Emma they dismissed and insulted for years. But I was still me, just not the version they believed. The aftermath unfolded exactly how I expected.
As I walked toward the front door, my mother hurried behind me. Emma, wait, please. I'm proud of you, truly. I paused. Thank you. She fidgeted with her sleeves. Can I come see your new place sometime? I considered this. Maybe, but I need boundaries, Mom. I need you to see me as I am, not as someone who needs fixing. She nodded, tears gathering. I can do that. Then came Olivia. She hugged me tightly, whispering into my ear, I'm sorry for everything. I think I was jealous. You built something incredible. I'm not angry, I said, just tired. Jessica waited near the door too. She twirled her hair and forced a smile. So, maybe we can hang out? I think we got off on the wrong foot. No, I said gently. I think we were exactly on the foot you created. She froze, unsure how to respond. I stepped outside into the cool air. The sky was soft lavender, the breeze warm, and for the first time ever, I didn't feel small leaving a family gathering. I felt powerful. Driving back to my penthouse, my phone buzzed again. Forbes confirming my interview. My attorney finalizing the equity agreement. My partner sending updates about the quarter's projections. And in that moment, with the city lights reflecting off my windshield, I realized something profound. I hadn't kept my success a secret because I feared judgment. I kept it secret because I didn't owe validation to people who only valued me when I fit their expectations. The next morning, I woke up in my sunlit bedroom, walked across marble floors, and brewed coffee in my designer kitchen. I opened the balcony doors and watched the city come alive beneath me. My life wasn't sad. It wasn't lacking. It was mine. Since that Easter, things have changed. My mother calls more gently now, actually listening. Olivia visits without comparing our lives. The rest of them, they keep their distance unless they want something, which I no longer give. I learned something priceless. Sometimes the best revenge isn't bragging or proving anything. It's living your life so fully and authentically that no amount of their judgment can touch you. And when I sit back in my velvet armchair at night, sipping wine and reviewing the next business milestone, I smile at the memory of Aunt Margaret whispering, such a sad life. If only she knew how happy I really am.